This morning, joining us to continue the conversation is Engineer Chinedum Elekwachi, a Public Affairs Analyst. Hello, good morning to you, Engineer. Can you hear me? Happy New Year to you. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, best of the year. We pray that this year brings us goodness.
Let's begin with this letter written by stakeholders from the Niger Delta region as it concerns a threat of another unrest or militancy in the region if the alleged unlawful exclusion of their companies from the 2022/2023 mini bid round and licensing of oil blocks by the NUPRC is not revisited. What do you make of this?
Well, their demand is genuine. I think that region of the country deserves special attention and pampering of the federal government because today you will know that the mainstay of our economy is from the oil. So the people producing this oil that has this oil, they deserve the protection, the pampering and the preservation of the federal government. The federal government has to give them whatever they demand and whatever they need. And you know their environment has been destroyed because of the oil spillage. So there is a need for special attention to be given to that region of the country. So to me, their letter is genuine. I think the federal government should listen to them and hurry up urgently work to salvage their situation. Whatever is their demand, there's a need to attend to them. An urgent need to attend to them.
Now, we keep talking about the PIA and the provisions in such documents that also ensures for the interest of host communities to be protected in such issues as there, but it almost feels as though that there has been a blatant disregard for the Petroleum Industry Act. Do you think that this would somewhat reawakening the willpower on the part of government to ensure that the PIA is followed to the latter as a letter of law?
See, I am surprised that since the passage of the PIA, we have not even seen any significant impact from that act. Apart from that the NNPPC has now been onboarded and become a corporate organization. That is the only implementation I've seen as regards the passage of that PIA. There is a need to implement every clause and every provision of that act to the letter. If that act is implemented, I think the problem we're having in the oil sector would have been solved to a barest minimum. So it's a call of responsibility for the federal government of Nigeria to implement every section, every clause, and every provision of that PIA. That B, which has now become an act, stayed for years before it came on board. And when it was finally assented to by the president, Nigeria saw it as a relief. But till today, that act has been implemented to less than 50%. So there's a need for a full implementation of that act, so that all this problem we keep having in the oil sector will be reduced to barest minimum, and Nigeria will feel the impact of the oil they have in the country, so that our economy can thrive and we can compete with other community of nations.
Now, more another issue emanating from the Niger Delta, and particularly in Rivers State, is the presentation of the 2025 budget by the state governor Sasimina Lai Fubara to the Oko Jumbo-led fraction of the state assembly. Many are talking about how controversial it has been. Let's talk about that before we talk about the figure in itself, which is also another historic landmark in the projections of what is budgeted for Rivers States going into this year.
The only problem I have with the presentation of the appropriation bill of 2025 is how the bill hurriedly was presented and hurriedly was passed by the State Assembly. With that, I don't think there was any scrutiny, because in less than 24 hours, that bill was ready for becoming an act for the governor to sign it. The governor presented that bill on 30th of December 2024. On 31st, should be the only legislative day they have to work on the bill, because first, which was 1st January, was a public holiday. Understandably, the House of Assembly will not sit. And on the second, that bill was already ready for the governor to assent it to it. This makes mockery of the state assembly, which means that state assembly has become a mere joke, a mere meeting of kindergartens. Which time did they have to do proper scrutiny of that budget? Which time did they have to do defense from the MDAs? So that is the only problem I have with the bill, with the appropriation bill of 2025, because the political crisis in Rivers State is causing our democracy and the provision of our laws to suffer in that state. And this should worry every genuine citizen of this country. This should worry, because I don't know where we are heading to as a country. I don't know that calls itself a democratic state. Where are we heading to? If an appropriation act to the tune of 1.7 trillion could just stay for less than 24 hours in the state assembly and it is passed into law, that means we are in for a joke in the country. And our democracy every day is taken for a ride. So this is the only problem I have with that appropriation act. And there is a need for urgent survey to salvage the political crisis in Rivers State, so that what you are seeing in that place will not continue happening.
Now, talking about these concerns you have, the APC also shares such a concern, and the APC has outrightly rejected the budget presentation to the Okojumbo Assembly. I know it's now talk about the APC versus PDP in the State House of Assembly, but beyond the political divisions, the time consideration which you have mentioned are some of the issues at bear. How best can the people of Rivers State lend their voice to this conversation? Because whatever is budgeted for is in their best interest, and the spending as well in holding government accountable also lies with the citizenry.
This is where the problem and challenges lies. So that's why my concern is basically on the time it was spent in the State Assembly. There was no proper scrutiny of that budget. There was no defense from the ministries, departments, and agencies. So the government, what the State Assembly just did is that they went and photocopied what the government presented to them and presented to him for an assent. This should worry, and I believe genuine citizens of the state and the country should be worried as well. Because if there is no proper defense of a budget in the ministry, if there is no proper scrutiny of, that means this issue will keep having a budget padding and extraction of unexistent projects will be there, and there will be a room for diversion of public fund. So this is the problem we have.
Now let's talk about the sum in itself. Historically, 1.188 trillion naira budgeted for Rivers State in 2025. I don't know the breakdown in terms of capital, recurrent expenditure, some of the gray areas which, much like yourself, are calling for. How would you envision it, especially when you look at some of the damage self-inflicted in Rivers State in terms of renovations to the State Assembly and other critical assets and properties of government that were somewhat destroyed during the jostle for power, even during local government council elections?
About the amount, we say that Rivers State is a rich state, an oil rich state. You can see what has happened in the state in the past 2 months, even with the High Court judgment that barred the federal government from giving them allocation from the federal government, FAC allocation. The state has been able to sustain themselves with their internally generated revenue. That tells you that the state is very rich. So I believe, and the governor have said in that budget presentation that he's not going to borrow any money to fund the budget, because in the 2024 budget that is going to expire by the coming month, he did not borrow any money to fund the budget. That tells you that they are equal to the tax. They has the money, but how prudent the money will be utilized is the big issue. Just like as we mentioned, the self-inflicted crisis, see the bombing and the destruction of the State House of Assembly and other public institutions in the state. And these monies are going to be taking chunk of it for the repair of those places, which calls for wastages. But I am happy that the governor has said that about 50% of the budget is going to go to education and healthcare, and that is a very, very good one, which the implementation is another thing. But if that is done, because according to UNDP provision, 26 budget of every budget cycle have to go to education, because the future of any state lies in the education of our citizens. So you must pay proper attention in the education of your people. Now there is need to renew syllables that you teach our pupils in schools, starting from the kindergarten. That is a crèche. There is a need for you to renew it because of this our era of technology. So smart schools is what every government should deploy its actions to. It's no longer like the things we used to have. So I'm happy the government is going in that direction, and he have promised to surpass what they did in infrastructure in 2024. You can see the government, even amidst of the political distraction and crisis in the states, they have been commissioning projects. So they have done a lot in infrastructure, and if they can do a lot of infrastructure to open up the state the more, to bring up investors to the state, that will be good for the economy of the state.
Now, in River State, still in River State, with the bickering and drama that has ensued between the governor and his predecessor, he made a statement this morning. He said that no governor in Nigeria would tolerate the amount of insults that he has had to stomach. And it's talking about keeping the peace in River State in 2025. How best can you see peace playing out, especially with the position of the governor, which he says is peace seeking?
You see, everything rises and falls in leadership. This problem in River State would have been resolved even before now if the political actors in the states were able to give in and to throw away their pride. The governor, as the governor of the state, is the father of the state. So it's because of him to do anything, to compromise, to return peace to his state so that he can have stability to govern his people. There is what they call pragmatism in politics, and that is when you are flexible. So every politician as a political leader have to be flexible. That is what I expect the governor Fubara to do. This kind of statement is even making this morning. It's not giving room for peace. It's not. So the governor should be pragmatic enough to reach out to the other camp. He should compromise for the sake of the unity and the progress and stability of his state so that he can govern very well. This egocentrism and showmanship is not going to help the state. You understand? So what I expect the governor to do in this year 2025, if they are genuinely really for peace to run in the state, they should reach out. There should be a compromise between the two political actors in the state and not throwing tantrums on public occasions. With that, peace can return in the state and they can have stability to govern. It's not a must that you will be in the same camp with your former political leader. It's not a must you will be in the same camp with him, but you can have a sense of peace, even if it's in party A or in party B, or you are in the same political party but in different opposing camps. There should be a sense of peace so that there will be stability in the state. And people will see, like what we are talking about in the state assembly, it was not meant to be happening if there are peace. If the political leaders have reached a table of compromise, it's a plea bargaining. Everybody will, you cannot share the whole political gains 50-50. It can be 70-30. So that for the sake of stability, the state can have peace to govern.
Now, let's talk about the River State. The former national vice chairman, Northwest of the APC, Dr. Salihu Lukman, in his New Year message disclosed that the opposition is looking to form a new party in shaping up for the 2027 elections. What do you make of such insinuations going into the next election cycle?
If that is possible, that will be very good for the opposition. Because if we have a united opposition, that is where you can compete with the ruling APC today in the country. But if the opposition is continuously divided as we are heading into the 2027 general election, there will not be any difference from what we experienced in the past. So for we to make headway, if the opposition want to defeat President Tinubu, they have to come together, and they coming together should be on a sincerity of purpose. On that way, they can defeat ruling APC government. But if they are depleted, they will share their vote and they will lose out. So I want to believe a Salihu Lukman, who has been a strong advocate, who is a no-nonsense man, who is a man I think he has courage. Because it's out of courage that he was able to resign his position as the national vice chairman of APC, and is returning to be with opposition camps. So if the opposition parties, opposition political leaders can do this, it will be good for the democracy, and in that we can even checkmate the policies of the present day government and offer viable recommendation. Because today it just looks like we don't have any opposition voice. The APC in the country, sorry to say, but it's very clear they are stifling the opposition. They have succeeded in almost putting crisis in all the opposition political parties. The PDP is struggling with their own. The Labour Party is struggling with their crisis. The NPP is also struggling with their own. Almost all the viable opposition political parties in the country has one crisis or the other to deal with, and this is what the APC. So if the opposition political parties can come out of their present day situation and can form a united camp, with that they can be able to compete and with the ruling APC government.
Now, all this talk about youth inclusivity as well in shaping up to the next election cycle and increased participation of the youths in politics has received another knock. Mr. Pat Otomi thinks that the Nigerian youths are taken for granted. In his words, he says that the Nigerian youths are treated like idiots. Do you agree?
I agree very much. I'm a young man. In the past, I've aspired to run for an election. The experience we have is another mind-boggling thing. It's very discouraging. But it should start. If political leaders like Professor Pat Otomi is concerned about this, people like him, they have good national voice. Let them come and champion the interests of the Nigerian youth. You see, the lottery you want to run is a good one. Which is a good one, which former President Buhari accepted into. It's a very good one, but we still have some challenges. The challenge we have is that as a young man, for you to run for an election, you should be able to have deep pockets. And where are you making that money from? Because as a young man, literally maybe just be out of school and you maybe just worked in a place. You have not had the opportunity to have big funds, but you have the passion to serve your people. And when you don't have big amount of money, you cannot be able to purchase nomination form of the political parties we have in the country. Even the one that has presented itself to be central political party, just like the Labour Party, even in the NPP and all these political parties, you cannot run for election in those political parties if you don't have a good amount of money, because the amount they are selling their nomination form is already a discouragement. So these are the problems we have. If the political parties want to really integrate youth in the affairs of their party, they have to consider the amount of money they are selling their nomination and express of interest form. Something happened in the build-up to 2023 general election. Then within the PDP, a group of young people, which I was among, we came together. This some activism. I personally wrote to the national youth leader of PDP and said, Mr. Youth Leader, you came on board on this mantra of youth participation in governance, and you are still a young man. I want you to do one thing for the young people. Insist that the National Working Committee of the party reduces nomination form for the young people. And that happened in the PDP. And you saw that if the first PDP had the young people, a lot of young people aspired for position in PDP because the cost of nomination form was reduced in 2023 general election. Although some of them lost in the primaries, and we know what later became of PDP because of the crisis the leaders had. If not, the PDP was bribed. So for you to encourage young people to participate in governance, it should start from political parties, reducing cost of their nomination forms. For the young people, reduce it, encourage them to come on board and show forth their capacity and the interest, the passion they have to serve their people. With that, the young people will have their place. And they should not just be reduced to the position of special assistants to the governors, special advisors that are redundant and not even active and not valued in governance. So this is what we have to do, and political parties have to do this. And young people that are elected as national youth leaders in political parties in the country have to do this for the sake of the young people. in your various political parties, ensure that the young people has their place, has inclusion, and that inclusion is to ensure that cost of nomination and expression of interest form is reduced so that young people's interest can be accommodated. And in primaries, this godfatherism of a thing that if you don't have a godfather, it will be difficult for you to secure nomination should be checkmated. And the national youth leaders in various political parties should tackle this. Fight for it. Fight for the interests of young people. Let them have their place and be able to stand and to run for an election. With this, we can have the young people inclusive and included in governance.
Well, I must thank you, Engineer Chinedum Elekwachi, for taking our time to grace the program this morning. We're wishing you the best of 2025. Do well to enjoy your day.
Thank you very much for having me.